Okay, hi, I'm Danny Vito, and I'll be discussing my paper on situational awareness for MAL 535. It's the first time I'm doing this on PowerPoint, so it's going to be interesting. Okay, all right. So, Cotter in his 1982 book, The General Managers, he describes 6 key challenges that managers regularly face. The first two on planning, and the second one on situational awareness, and the last 3 are really effective communication. I've listed them here at the bottom, how he describes them. But really, these 3 categories aren't quite independent of each other. You can't get support from above laterally or motivate below if you're 5 steps behind everybody else. So same goes for planning. You really need to be aware of your surroundings and to be able to chart the vision. The Canadian government in particular has been talking about this for quite some time. Let me go next slide. All right. So over 10 years ago, a paper was authored by Defense R&D Canada developing the vision for a knowledge portal to aid the Canadian National Defence Command Centre in improving their situational awareness. They note that, quote, it's becoming more and more essential to be able to quickly find and share relevant information. Information must be distributed efficiently and understood by participants who are often geographically or virtually dispersed, end quote. If we follow the implication of their findings, situational awareness enables both strategic planning and effective communication. Next. All right. So to that end, many large companies and various startups have made valiant competitive attempts at trying to solve this problem with quite honestly, very little success. And generally, the approach is to attempt to move from the organizational communication structure on the left to something that looks more like what's on the right. And the literature tend to indicate that the communication structure on the right, or the graph structure, is preferred for increased situational awareness. The challenge with this is in part technological and in part cultural. There's a technological barrier to addressing a series of context management challenges and a cultural fear of the adoption of a tool that would increase transparency, which is sometimes not necessarily wanted, and personal accountability. The technological barrier is really outside of the scope of this presentation, but it's a topic of much discussion, and it's on the outside, and it's worth looking at. The rest of this presentation focuses on the challenges of the cultural barrier when trying to make the shift from the large hierarchical organization like the one on the left to one that participates actively in the maintenance of situational awareness for everyone. So Cotter built his 1996 change model with the large hierarchical organization in mind. His 8-step change model has 3 parts to it. First, it's changing the climate. In this part, most of the effort is concentrated in developing the vision and assembling the right people and opportunity to push the vision forward. Second is engaging the organization. And here the goal is to achieve a critical mass while acting as a servant to the change by removing as many surrounding obstacles as possible. The goal here is to achieve a quick turnaround results that will keep the team motivated. And for the last part, the goal is to maintain the change by pushing the change to teams or organizational structures that were either initially not involved or maybe resistive to the change. From there, the artifacts are created and adopted by other external leadership teams through the continued demonstration of success. So more practically, within the hierarchy of a large organization, the sense of urgency for situational awareness is pretty much already created just from the structure. The lack of real-time situational awareness drives anxiety into many tiers of management when they need to make a decision. So the practical challenge for this step is not so much the urgency, but more so being able to create an incubating chamber for this vision. A small enough bubble might be able to avoid the strength of the managerial hierarchy and the process control until the vision has at least a chance to make it to the front door. In this organization that I describe in the paper, a nice incubating chamber might be a special sort of collaborative team project that can run under a single sponsoring manager. Next would be leveraging the small project team to engage the organization by slowly involving more and more people to create critical mass. The simplest way to do this in this example would be to tackle a few short-term projects whose spheres of influence aren't fully contained within the bubble, and let the natural sort of network of the project create relevance and involvement of outside groups. As the successes of the short-term projects grow, the change leader should help to remove the obstacles around it, both the technological ones for scaling and the political obstacles that you'll run into along the way. So finally, the new culture of increased transparency and communication is maintained by distributing the change process to various decentralized leaders to continue to maintain the system and encourage the new culture. So the Cotter change model suffers from a high dependency on external factors. The increase in transparency and increase in communication also means that people would have to be sort of forced to take the time to learn the language of the person that they're trying to communicate with. Sounds fairly intuitive, but there would be quite a bit of resistance to trying to do this at a large scale. In my personal workspace, that would mean someone from aerodynamics would have to learn the vocabulary of the loads and structural stress teams and vice versa. And some people just want to be left alone in their corner to talk with as few people as humanly possible. So if there is insufficient buy-in from the employees or insufficient political push through management to drive the requirements or insufficient organizational buy-in, the change will fails. This change model operates under the assumption that more than a small handful of management does in fact suffer from the failures in communication, and that they do see the value that this change could bring in terms of first pass quality. The other challenge with this change model is the lack of space for deviations once the change process has begun. If the organization suddenly decides that they're going to change the commodity that they work or divide the labor force into various geographical centers with new people, and they do this overnight, then the change will fail too. So it's not very agile, but for the large and heavy organizations that Cotter had in mind when he was building it, that this applies well. Another challenge is the lack of participation in the initial vision forming. So it's pretty much a one-man show for the first 3 steps of the change model in terms of the vision definition. Cotter later addresses a few of these issues in his more recent Accelerate model, but the original model suffers from this lack of participation. So as long as you get as long as you can get the right organizational buy-in in the right environment, the model is fairly easy to apply and very granular. As the interconnectivity of the network grows, the efficiency of teamwork should increase with less need to host these large status meetings or consume a bunch of overhead time and just trying to identify the sphere of impact, if you will, of a new project. Metrics can be placed on the global project schedules, and observations can be made on the elapsed start to end time, or the rate of on-time milestone deliveries, or reduction in overhead spending, or the type of overhead spending. There are a series of numerical, accounting things that you could look for to gauge how the project is doing. The fringes of the project network. So this is what the project network might look like, right? So your interconnectivity between people or items or action items or commodity or something along those lines. Right? So you have a graph network of all of the ways that one item relates to another. So the fringes of the project networks might be an unmanaged task or a forgotten risk that might undermine the success of the project. The decision-making protocols should regularly check the fringes of the network to make sure that they are where they should be. Graph nodes that become very large and centralized should be sort of scrubbed regularly to ensure that they're aligned with the priorities of the business and resource managed appropriately. You can get some priority from the context, knowing what things are linked to. If you have an item that might be linked to the CEO of the organization, maybe there's something they really care about, and maybe knowing the network from that context, you might be able to say, oh, okay, I know that this might actually be important. But there's only so much you can gain from context without actually scrubbing it, with a human. Right? So you go through and you look at these the large nodes, and you say, okay, well these are the ones that the system is telling me are important. But let's really now as a management team go in and say, okay, well we're going to scrub these and make sure that this actually looks the way it should. So the other part is it's entirely possible that the original question that kicked off the project in the first place is really an unmanageable fishing trip, and that's it may not be immediately obvious how you see that through here, but so very much still dependent on management teams. It isn't intended to somehow replace management. The idea is to make it more efficient and make their decision, make their awareness for making decisions more, making the information more available. So changing the fundamental structure of an organization is possible, but it's incredibly challenging. The definition of the vision can be fairly straightforward, but the devil's really in the details. And increasing transparency and improving situational awareness should have a long-lasting impact on how we do business and how we plan and how we communicate with others. And well, who knows? Maybe through a network like this, Beaujolais' letter on O-ring failures could have seen the light of day before the Challenger disaster. And that's it. How do I stop this? Where's the button?